All right, everyone. How are you doing? I hope that you are having a fine day this afternoon. It is a beautiful day in Kitsap County. It is 3 p.m. straight up in Kitsap County, 56 degrees. Wonderful day. So glad that you can join us here. This is the Civic Cafe. We're super excited to launch this show in 2024. We had the political minute earlier last year with Jeff Campbell, but he has now since moved to the East Coast. But we're going to continue on. And I think it is super appropriate to have our first guest, the newly minted city councilwoman of District 4. Hit the horn and the applause for Jane Rebelowski. So we're going to bring her up in just a minute. We want to make sure that people get a chance to kind of jump on in here so they can listen. And I will say this to Jane publicly when I bring her up. But one, I do want to congratulate her on her win. And also, what I want people to really see and understand is that if we want to have the best city that we can have, that means that we have to work together. So doesn't matter if you win, lose, what side of the aisle you're on, or a particular issue, you have to find ways to come together and navigate. If you watch city council, sometimes it's a knockdown, drag out, very contentious meeting between city council or city council and the mayor, and those things are going to happen. But we want good governance, we want information, we want clarity, and the fact that our councilwoman is willing to come on and share information and bring us information, we're very appreciative of that, and I think it's really powerful. And so we will endeavor to bring information to folks and make the government and democracy available for more people where it hasn't been. And with all that, let me go ahead and bring on our guest today, Jane Rebelowski, with applause. Jane, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Looks like I have a halo over my head, though.
You're an angel.
Oh, that's right.
So I appreciate you coming on, and like I said when you were in the green room, congratulations on your win.
Thank you very much.
What's it been like?
Um, Definitely a learning experience. But as you know, I was a close watcher of the city council for quite a while. Almost all of the 25 years I've lived here. Uh, for quite a while, though, I was commuting into Seattle, so I could never attend live performances of the council. So I would, watch the repeats on BCAT. But it's good to be there listening to everybody's thoughts on how they would like our government to work, um, the things that they hope the city government can do for them. But there's a lot of things that are out of our purview that we, nobody listened to us, like on international or national issues. So we try to do what we can to help the local issues get modified so that it works best for the most of us. Not everybody's going to be happy, but the decisions, I think, are well thought out. I think all of the council members really try to look at all the information and make a fair analysis.
I wish that you all had a little bit more time. It seems like there's so much stuff to cover every week, and you're consuming so much information. If anyone has looked at the packets before the meeting, there's a lot to consume and digest, correct?
Oh, sometimes there's over 500 pages. But then last night we were done at 6:30. There was not any general business to be had, but we have a 6-hour meeting planned for Saturday. So I
You're gonna
guess
make up
it'll
for
balance out. Yes.
it. Yeah, I was surprised how fast it was last night. I was like, oh, well, that's it. And there weren't a lot of council reports. I was like, well, hey, we'll take it.
Yeah. But
Well,
I hope you saw my council report.
oh, I
Um,
did. Absolutely.
it's so wonderful that we're getting our neighborhood grocery store back soon. We have missed the Midtown Market so much, and so yep, they're coming back from the ashes. We got some good volunteer work done last Saturday, and we have plans to do more. Eradicating blackberries is not for the faint of heart, but it's going to make a big difference. Gaining square footage in that park, and plus just having a nicer place for the neighborhood kids to play in.
I saw a picture of all the dead blackberry bushes you pulled out. That was quite the pile. You said it was 5 of you?
Yep,
Yeah,
five
that
of
was a
us.
massive pile.
Yeah, and we did that in 2 hours, which is
Wow.
about my limit for pulling out blackberries. And I think everybody else was done too. But yep, if we get 10 people on March 9th, we can finish pulling out all the dead blackberries. We'll probably have to go back and do, some dig outs, but we can
Now,
get it done.
where are you meeting and what time on March 9th?
At Matan Park, and we go from 11 to 1.
All right, 11 to 1 on March 9th. If you want to help uh, get rid of those blackberry bushes, those sticker bushes that some people call them, come on
Mm-hmm.
down, show up, couple hours. Look how much work can be done in just a 2-hour period. It's great. Well, let's jump into it, Jane. You had a few things that you wanted to get into today and bring to us. I'm super excited about it because I think that a lot of people aren't really sure on what this multifamily housing situation is and how it's going to benefit the community. And this has been one of the things that you've been advocating for quite a while. I think you're one of the most knowledgeable people on city council in regard to the multifamily uh, direction that things are going in. So I'm excited that this is one of the first things that you wanted to talk about. So I'm going to just kind of toss it to you. What did you want to talk about first? Transportation, multifamily? Where did you want to go?
No, I would love to start with the multifamily tax exemption.
All right.
So currently, we have two different programs. One is good for 8 years, and when a developer buys a piece of property and submits plans, let's pretend the property with a house on it cost is taxed at $100,000, right?
Okay.
And of that, we'll say $80,000 is the house and $20,000 is what the land is worth. Well, when they build a new multi-million dollar building on it, all they have to pay on taxes is that $20,000 land value for 8 full years. That means they don't have to pay for schools or libraries, police, fire, all those different taxes that the rest of us have to pay. And those are market rate apartments, like $1,900 for a studio type apartments.
Wow.
I call them luxury apartments, though not they like to call it market rate. Um, but to me, a luxury apartment is one with granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, concierge services, rooftop decks, or what have you. And that's not how most of us are able to live or even want to. Then there's a 12-year program that they get this all the same benefit, except they have to set aside 20% of the units for affordable and low income housing. And currently, by state law, they base that on the county's income. So in Bremerton, 40% of our households make less than $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
And they combine the the average incomes of Bainbridge Island and Poulsbo and Port Orchard with Bremerton. So they have a higher number. They're saying it's like the average household is 75,000. And I just made up that number, but it's much higher than what our average income is in Bremerton.
Right.
So several years ago, the mayor asked his staff to come up with a program to modify that so that it was only the 12-year program that gave us some affordable housing to get these huge tax breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, council said no, and they didn't want it to move forward at all. They felt that it would leave the middle income people without any choices. But right now, what we all know we have is the middle and the lower income folks have no choices anyway. So,
Facts.
you know, and I think that we should keep the 12-year so that at least we're getting some affordable housing. But also, as staff had requested council to consider, to change the income level so that it more closely reflects on Bremerton. So at our council retreat this Saturday, we were all allowed to give our top 3 goals that we wanted discussed with the rest of the council members. So this was my number 1 goal. I really would like to see it changed. I went to council, I can't tell you how many times, begging them to modify it, and was very disappointed that they chose not to at that time. Now, this time, if it moves forward, it's going to have to move forward by council and not the mayor and staff. The mayor and staff, of course, would support us and help us, but they want council to say, this is what we want to do. We want to look at eliminating the 8-year for the luxury apartments.
So, Jane, can I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
So, my question, kind of as a just a Bremerton resident that doesn't have a lot of information, when I hear, a 12-year tax break and you're going to make 20% affordable housing, if you think about 5 units, that's a 5-unit building. That's one apartment, right? That's one unit. And the need is so great. Is
Mm-hmm.
it feasible and or realistic to reverse that and still be incentive enough for developers to come in and build and say, hey, 4 out of 5 units need to be affordable? Because it feels like to me, if we're only doing 20% at 12 years, we're chasing this problem that we're never going to catch up to.
I don't disagree. Um, I think things have to be done incrementally in order for me to convince everybody in council we should do this. Now, there are some people who do support it, but I don't know that I have the majority yet. And so I agree that 20% is very low. One thing that may help is the planning commission is going to be having a big discussion on changing parking rules, how many parking spaces each development needs to have. So parking, as we know, is really expensive, especially if they have to do underground. And the entire downtown is going to be zoned in such a way that buildings are going to need to be at least 6 stories high. That means they're going to have to put in underground parking. And underground parking goes anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 a space. So if we can change those parking requirements and either lessen them greatly or just remove them, then we would start seeing some affordable housing that's privately owned down there. Um, the Bremerton Housing Authority is about to open up a new building in our district on Warren Avenue. And it's a wonderful, wonderful project because it's aimed at young people who have aged out of foster care, or other younger people who just don't have either family or community support. And there's going to be all sorts of agencies there. But that is something that a private builder constructed and then sold it to the housing authority. But if we want any projects that actually stay on the tax roll, we're going to have to give developers some incentives.
So, Jane, do you think that city council may be willing to negotiate, not for maybe 80%, that might be a bridge too far, but maybe 50% instead of the 20?
Uh, I don't I don't know that we would be able to get enough developers to go for it.
So talk about that for me, if you will. Like, what does this mean for developers? Like, why is this such a benefit for them to trigger them building? And why does that turn them off and say, hey, you know what? There's really nothing for me here to build unless you give me this tax exemption.
Well, it's it's like that old saying, well, I won't even go there. But they're all anybody who's out to make money, which is, what a developer, that's why they're in that line of work, to make
Yep,
money,
that's fair.
right?
Yep.
So any way that they can figure out how to make a little more money, they're going to go for that, and they're going to fight back at any modifications that might lessen their income. So getting it to 50%, I I doubt it. Maybe I could convince them start at 30%, and then, every year we add another 5% or something
Ooh.
to, I mean, it's a thought, and I'm not promising anything there, but those are things that I will definitely bring up and ask people to consider.
No, I really appreciate that. And I think, for we know that we have all of these different crises that we're dealing with as a city, as a nation, right? We're not unique in that. And we have to find ways to solve it that are novel.
Hmm.
And that's not going to happen if someone doesn't bring those ideas to the table. So I appreciate the fact that you're saying, hey, I can bring it up and put those things out there and see what happens. Because if you don't say anything, no one will. We don't
Yeah,
know what could be possible, right?
the needle will never move.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
one other thing that I've been doing some research on and talking with Kitsap County realtors, and they're pretty excited. We read an article in, I forget the name of the newspaper up in Port Angeles, but the city of Port Angeles got a grant through the Department of Commerce, and they had housing plans developed for like ADUs
Mhm.
or townhomes, like 3 or 4 townhomes attached. And they went through the whole permitting on them and reviewed them. And so now anybody who's building in Port Angeles can go and get a set of permit ready plans for free. They don't
Really?
charge them, they're ready to go. And that is what holds back a lot of people from building ADUs. There's a lot of large lots in the city where people could put 1 or even 2 ADU units on it. And if they don't have to fork out the money to have plans developed and sit in permitting for, I don't know, I'll be generous and say for 6 months, And if you're doing anything kind of weird, your permitting may take longer than that. And the Kitsap realtors are very excited about this. And they did some additional research on the grants and sent me more information today on it so that I could present that as an option too, of a way to get lower income housing quicker in the city. And developers could use those plans too, like especially on some of the city owned land that we're not in need of for utilities. It's like maybe they could go and build 4 or 5 townhomes on it. And we have
Mhm.
plans ready for you. Just come in. Here's an inexpensive piece of property. Utilities are in the back already. I mean, could you imagine if we could actually get that going?
Yeah, I do. I do. Is there a consideration for the electrification of our vehicles to build that in as new developers are coming in to build?
You mean to install
Yes.
outlets?
Mhm.
Well, I know Pierce County, they require it now with all new
Okay.
builds. Um, I'm don't think we do yet, and I don't. I think there's would be pushback from some of the builders at this time because that is expensive to add it. But maybe if they at least had the conduit in place for the wiring to do
Mhm.
that, so that people it'd be less expensive for a property owner to do that. But that's really it's a good point because everybody except me someday is going to own an electric vehicle. I got, I am knocking on wood that I never have to buy another vehicle in my life. My truck's 22 years old and it has 100,000 miles on it, so
All right, we'll knock on
should
wood.
be should be good for another 22 years.
Well, let me ask you this first. Can you explain ADUs to folks that may not know what that acronym is?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, so that would be uh, like a place where set in the back corner of your yard where you could share utilities if, like, let's say your existing sewer line is in good shape, you might be able to tie into that instead of
Mm.
having to dig up a new, excuse me, line. Um, but if you have a plan that's ready to go, you could probably get one built for under $40,000. And
Okay.
then that would be an income stream for you for the rest of the time you lived in that property. And it would provide a home, you know? So typically they're less than 800 square feet and usually a 2 bedroom, 1 bath. I've seen super fancy ones. I've seen ones that are just your basic house, nothing fancy, but a good, comfortable, clean place to live.
Thank you for explaining that. For those of you that are just tuning in, this is our Civic Cafe. We're having a conversation with Jane Rebelowski, Councilwoman, Bremerton City Council District 4. We're having a great conversation about housing, and so glad that you could tune in. Jane, I also wanted to ask you, you said something that triggered me a little bit, and I know about this just because of looking at the long-term planning and, being in on some of these conversations. And, I understand that it will make it cheaper to build and remove the need for parking spots. Uh, but as someone who relies upon transportation and provides transportation to a lot of folks here in the community, I have great concern that Kitsap Transit or other modes of transportation may not be adequate enough for those folks to take advantage of those affordable units, right? You have folks that have to work multiple jobs in order to be able to afford the rent. They have childcare that may likely not be downtown. They have other places they need to be. And so we're still very reliant upon personal vehicles in the city and really kind of in this county right now as we're pretty spread out. So what are your thoughts on that? And is there a plan to address that so it doesn't people don't save money on their housing costs, but it increase in their transportation costs, and then it's just a wash?
I don't disagree. I mean, to me, a bus once an hour is not transit,
Mhm.
you know? Um, so we need to continue to push Kitsap Transit hard. And luckily, one of our council members, who's now been on the Kitsap Transit Board for a couple years, has finally got them to agree to at least consider having dial-a-ride in Bremerton. They have it all over Bainbridge Island. I don't know if you've ever been out there, but they got little buses going everywhere. Then they have, and they use dial-a-ride to figure out where the most demand is for them to put in a new route, right?
Mhm.
So without the dial-a-ride, they can say, well, we don't have any data, so we have no idea where to go. So by getting dial-a-ride in, it gets us the data and says, this is where you have to go. Because right now, as we know, Kitsap Transit primarily serves commuters who work at the shipyard or going to Seattle. Um, you can't have a bus that shuts down before 8 o'clock for somebody who's working at the mall.
Right.
They can't get back to town. All of a sudden, they're taking an Uber or a cab, and they lost all the money they made that day.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, it's hand in hand, and then also it's building up our active transportation network, which is so needed. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot more people on regular bikes and electric bikes have totally changed the attitude of a lot of engineers where they're not so car centric and they get it. We're here. I mean, I've got an electric bike. I crashed it
Oh,
a couple
really?
times, but I have one. and it and it's fun, but yeah, I mean, my grandson, he's 19 years old. He gets everywhere on his electric bike. He doesn't even really have a desire to get a driver's license, although
Wow.
he might get one. And I know a lot of younger people who feel that way. And a lot of the younger families that have moved into town, they came with one vehicle for the whole family to use, and some of them no vehicle.
Mhm.
So by quickly getting in bike lanes and better sidewalks and getting them connected, because they're all like little tiny pieces everywhere. So by getting the active transportation fixed or upgraded, I think that will be a huge benefit to the current, I'll be generous and say poor transit service that we get here.
And I'll say, there is, citizens also have to do their part. I know that Kitsap Transit right now has some folks that they have hired on to do some route counting. So they're
Hmm.
counting how many people are riding the routes. And so some of it is kind of chicken and the egg, right? It's like,
Right.
is there demand? Well, if you build it, they will come. So you can do some of your part too, and maybe get on a public bus every now and then. I hear the experience is pretty cool. Um, but it is expensive to run a public transit, and there has to be demand. But how do you get the demand? So that's kind of a hard one. But consider riding the bus. I know the electric buses are really nice. The bus staff are really nice, and I hear a lot of good things about Kitsap Transit. One of my organizations just awarded Kitsap Transit an award a couple Fridays ago. So, um, and I know that they're working toward getting their commute times, like a bus every 30 minutes or even
Hmm.
more frequent in places. So that may take a while to do, but just wanted to put that out there for people that their Kitsap Transit is trying to move in that direction. When that may take place, we don't know when that will be.
Yeah, we have a pretty good board right now that that seem to really understand the need of real transit, you know. So I think we can push the needle a little bit on that one. And Anna is doing great work, and our mayor is the chair this year. Their board meetings that the public can attend are at 8 o'clock in the morning. So this woman doesn't get ready to go out in the world at 8 o'clock in the morning too often, but on occasion I do attend the meetings.
And so you would say it's important to not only attend Kitsap Transit meetings, but also, come to city council and or write an email. It's that you guys read the emails, you really take what people say very seriously and put a lot of thought into it. Is that correct?
Email is so critical. It's unbelievably critical. Coming and testifying is great too, but I'd say with a lot of the counselors, emails make more of an impact on some of them because you only have 3 minutes to speak, but somebody can keep rereading your emails. So just the more you can send in your thoughts and ideas, the better. I mean, some of them we can't do. Like, I got a very heartfelt email from somebody hoping that I could do something as an elected official about the war in the Middle East.
Mm.
Well, I can't.
Mhm.
I sympathize greatly. I mean, I think it's horrible what's happening to everybody over there. But um, there's other things that we can do. And, we are doing. You know, I'm on the Public Works Committee, and they currently have just a speed bump policy for traffic calming, right? And they've recognized that a speed bump doesn't go anywhere, isn't the only thing to use. So now they're developing a whole traffic calming project. And not a lot of money in it yet, but when they can get that completed for the residents to look at and consider, then maybe we can start getting some more funding to do it, because we make funding decisions based a lot on what the community asks for.
Man,
It's
that's an insider tip right there.
yeah. So, I mean, keep asking, I mean, there's not always money for everything, of course. And things like utilities, water lines, sewer lines, storm lines, I'm not going to fight them when they say this line is broken, we need to fix it. It's like, yeah, go fix it,
Mhm.
you know. But I'd like to see more smaller projects throughout the city, instead of just two giant projects every other year. I
Gotcha.
think I think small things can make bigger impacts a lot of times for less money.
All right. And what Jane is sharing with us is that email can actually be more impactful than public comment because they can read it over and over. So if you're in District 4, Jane's email is Jane, Jane dot Rebelowski, Rebelowski at ci dot Bremerton dot wa dot us. It's at the bottom of the screen. But I just wanted to read that out for those that may be listening only. All right. So we talked a little bit about FTEs, MFFTEs. What else did you want to get into today? Did we cover that in full? Do we need to stay there
No,
for
I
a
think
bit?
I would like to hear people's thoughts on the proposed 6th Street bike lanes.
Okay.
Please send me emails, because right now, um, that's been on the city's comp plan since 2007. Because right
Mm,
now, there's really no way for people in District 4 to safely ride their bike down to the city, down to downtown. I, for one, wrecked on 13th Street because it's so steep and the pavement condition was poor. Um,
Mm.
Plus it's a narrow street. You have to like get out with the traffic, and everybody's waiting forever at 13th anyway in Warren. So they're a little aggressive sometimes.
Seeing that I
So we're
live on the
trying to,
corner of 13th and Warren, I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah. You gotta sit there exactly right too to get the lights
Yes,
to
you
trip.
do. Yes, you do. Or you're gonna wait for a while. So,
Yeah.
are you proposing like a bike lane on Warren Avenue going straight downtown and going across
No,
the
we're
bridge? No.
proposing they're actually have hired a consultant to study the design for 6th Street from Wyckoff to Park Avenue.
Ah, okay.
So currently, most of 6th Street is 4 lanes wide. It would go to 3 lanes wide, the center turn lane, and then 6 foot wide bike lanes adjacent to the sidewalks in each direction.
Gotcha. All right. What would that do to traffic? Would that slow it down a little bit?
It it may slow it down a little bit, but based on the counts, it's not like you're going to have big backups. The only place that I foresee any kind of backup would possibly be at Naval and 6 for people who are coming up 6 and wanting to turn onto Naval. But 6th Street is that part is not part of the route that we want vehicles to go. We want them to stay on the major arterials if they're just commuting. You know, they
Gotcha.
should be leaving these minor arterials for those of us who actually live in the city.
Right,
You
right.
know, so people might have to wait 15 seconds more to turn into Noah's if they're, headed eastbound. But I think just visually, when you have a less wide looking street, people automatically start slowing down. That's why I'm all for narrow lanes, as narrow a lane as a vehicle can safely maneuver in.
Well, I think when you put it in terms of, it would extend your wait time to make a right turn by 15 seconds. I think it's a lot more digestible and tangible for people.
Hmm.
Because when I think of bike lanes and, one lane, both ways in a turn lane, I think of Silverdale. And there was a
Oh,
time when Silverdale was great. And it's like now there's a time when it's like, I do not want to be in Silverdale during this time of day. It's horrible.
right.
But
Well, the traffic counts on 6th Street are much lower than Burwell or 11th. So it's the logical choice.
yeah, I just think that's a really effective way to talk about it. I actually haven't heard it expressed in, might add 15 seconds to a turn. That wouldn't
Maybe.
be a negative impact, right? Approximately, let's say.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a negative impact to me. So that's probably the strongest advocacy that I've heard on that. So yeah, so we talked about, the MFTEs. Well, what's next? And also again, Jane is asking, please reach out to her. Her email's at the bottom of the screen. You can also type any questions or comments that you have in the chat. And if Jane is able to answer those on air, she will. If not, she'll get back to you later. Go ahead, Jane.
Well, I want to make sure everybody knows about our joint planning session on Saturday.
Ah,
Um, it's also referred to as a council retreat, and it's when all the city council gets together for an all-day meeting, and the department heads are there listening to our ideas for the first half of the day. And then the second half of the day, I like to call it the dream killer stage. That's when they're like, well, you can't do that because that's against federal law, or you can't do that because of A, B, and C. But it's a way for us to engage each other on what our ideas are and our dreams for the city. Um, and then make a tangible list of what our goals are to accomplish. And I think we're going to do 2-year goals, but
mm,
then we'll do it, a check in next year to say, okay, well, we've got, you know, 7 of these done. Let's add 6 more goals or whatever. So it's not like these are the only things council are going to be working on, but these are the primary things that we would like to look at. And the public is very much invited to either attend in person or watch on Zoom. Um, you're not allowed to publicly comment, which I'm sorry, but you can watch for as long as you want. Send emails in. Definitely, we will all be reading emails. So, you know, not during the session, but next week. I would love to see everybody's responses on what sort of things the residents feel should be our goals.
So that is this Saturday, February 24th from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. That will be at the Kitsap Conference Center. Uh, should be a very informative event. I think Council President Jennifer Chamberlain was saying that she doesn't think people will be fed, so they may have to bring their own food. But you are welcome to come. I will try to stream this also on the conduit. I have COVID, so I won't be in attendance in person. But I actually love the dream killer portion. I know that's a big Debbie Downer, but I think a lot of us that live in the city don't understand how government works. And so we don't know what can be done and what can't be done. It's like, well, why can't we do this with Harrison Hospital? And what about eminent domain? And we have all these ideas and we don't
Right.
know what's legal and what's not legal. So I actually love that part of it because it's such an education on, okay, that's why. Oh, that makes sense. Or
Mhm.
could we change that? You know, what's your
Mm.
thoughts?
I think I'm the only one who calls it the dream killer segment, but
Well, I won't forget it now. It's like, oh,
I
where's the
know.
dream killer portion? No, I love it. I think that's a really good opportunity for residents to really see how local government works, um, because we do have this kind of armchair quarterback thinking. You know, we'll do this and do that, and we don't understand why something can or cannot be done. So I
Right.
think it's really helpful if you can tune in. Again, as Jane said, it will be on BCAT. Obviously, you can come in person, and like I said, I will try to stream it so it'll be available for folks to digest and watch because I think that really is important. And just one other thing, Jane, before I throw it back to you, you know, Jane is saying, hey, you know, send us emails, you know, contact us. And so, because you can't talk at that event, if you have a dialogue with your city council person, it might be more likely that they ask a question that you have submitted because, well, if a lot of people are submitting that, then they're probably going to take it forward. Does that seem to be a pretty good assumption?
Absolutely. You send me questions, and if I can work them in, I will work them in. And if I can't work them in at that meeting, I can work them in at other meetings because we have them every week, or at least four weeks out of the month. So,
Yeah.
um, one other thing I wanted to make sure everybody knows too is that I'm holding monthly district meetings at the high school. Um, the high school is really generous. They're not charging me where every place else wanted to, but except Noah said I could do it for free there, but they be a little noisy. But
Hmm.
last month we sat and had a really great conversation about the comprehensive plan, and we had the planning manager come in. And so these are usually like smaller groups. I'd say there was maybe 10, a dozen people. So you can really question back and forth about whatever subject um, matter expert I've invited in. And next month, I asked Chief Wolf if he can send somebody from the police department to discuss in depth what their pursuit policy is.
Oh,
Because,
nice.
yeah, I attended the Bremerton Citizens Police Academy, which it's like I did not want to go. And he twisted my arm, and I went, and it was so much fun. And you get to ask any question you want to ask, and I did, and met a lot of great people at it. Um, had a lot of fun, learned some really sad things. Our domestic violence is so outrageous in our community. I couldn't believe how often our officers have to go and help families with that situation.
Wow.
But so yeah, they'll be talking about the pursuit policy, and then we can ask them any other questions we want to ask.
So
So
now, when is that? Is that Bremerton High
it's
School?
it's at Bremerton High School, and it's always going to be the first Thursday of the month,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts at 5 o'clock and goes to about 6:30. And you just go to the main entrance, and then I have little signs to the room. It's like in their guidance counselor section of the high school. It's really close to the main entrance.
All right, so that's monthly district meetings at Bremerton High School, the first Thursday at 5 p.m. Put it on your calendar. Perfect time to drop in, nice intimate setting where you can ask questions and socialize. And I love that you bring other folks to, share information and make themselves available too. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if people have suggestions of who they would like me to bring in for following months, let me know. They reply to my emails now.
Hey, funny how an election might do that, huh? So, Jane, you also wanted to touch on transportation. Let's get into that a little bit.
Okay. So there's a lot happening in transportation. Well, yeah, probably most of you realize that 11th Street by and at Washington is closed for the next few months as they finish that up, and there's going to be real sidewalks finally that you know you're not going to be playing Frogger anymore trying to cross the streets there. They'll be narrowing up the pavement quite a bit. Um, there'll be real bike lanes. It's just going to really help us all get around that area. Um, but at the Public Works Committee meeting the other night or afternoon, we talked about a lot of things that the city's modifying, like which grants to go after for what projects. So now there's going to be a more streamlined way where we can vote, assign scores to different projects. Like if this project is just helping one block of one neighborhood that's already gotten 5 projects, then they're probably not going to score that high for staff to spend the time to go after a grant, which is how we really do pay for almost all the big ones. Usually we have a matching portion, usually somewhere between 15 and 25% that the city has to pay, but not always. Sometimes they're less. So by developing this scoring project, I think it's going to be much more transparent. People will see on the transportation improvement list projects at the top of the list that make sense to a lot of the residents. Sometimes there'll be projects and it's like, why are we doing that? Why are we spending all this money? And this way you can look back and you can see, okay, we picked this grant because the sewer line was failing under these 2 blocks of the road. So we knew we were going to have to dig up this road anyway. So that comes out of sewer fund money, which is one. So let's take some of our transportation dollars and upgrade the ADA ramps and put in a good sidewalk and do that all at the same time. So you'll be able to see the reasons why certain projects were picked, which I think is fantastic. Um, there's another project that I asked them to put on the agenda. It's called the J to K Trail. I don't know if
Okay.
you've ever heard of it.
Mm-mm.
It's a multi-use trail that was first discussed, I think, about 2010.
Okay.
And it would go from Jarstead Park and then wind around and get up to Kitsap Lake. And one of the beautiful things about this, if we can figure out how to do robust protection of our watershed lands because it goes adjacent to some of them. Um, but if this pathway was built robust enough, it could be used for emergency services. Like if we ever have an earthquake,
Mm,
they can get from Bremerton Airport all the way up to the north part of the county.
really?
If we don't put something in, there wouldn't be a way to bypass Gorse. I mean, there's just, you're not going to take big supply trucks up over Sinclair Heights. So it's not like we have money for this yet, but there are a lot of interest from emergency management groups that we install this. So it wouldn't be something that just the residents of Bremerton would be paying for. It's beautiful. It goes right by a lake. It'd be a wonderful place to spend an afternoon with your kids riding bikes and walking and picnicking. And so that's a project way off in the distance, but it's something that we're thinking about again. At least trying to get a feasibility study on the books so we can actually see if we can pull the money together to do something like that. Because the number one thing that people ask for when they're surveyed for parks
Hmm.
is people want more trails.
Really?
They want, yeah, they
Okay.
want a place to walk in the woods with their kids and their dog. And it's not big expensive playgrounds, which are great. I love what Kiwanis is doing for us up at Kiwanis Park. um, but people want hiking trails a lot. So any way that we can help people get out into nature and breathe some fresh air, I think is great.
So I love the fact that you were mentioning being able to see what is selected and what's going to be worked on. Uh,
Hmm.
and I don't know if you've been hearing from your constituents, as I am one. I'm going to share my transportation woes with you. From what I hear in the community, it's just what you said. We've got a Chipotle now on the east side, and I think a Wendy's coming and a Mod Pizza, which is great. But many of those restaurants and businesses close after Kitsap Transit shuts down and folks have no
Right.
way to get home from work. Uh, there was a constituent of yours that lived in between you and I that I was taking to work 4 days a week uh, to work at the gas station at 11 p.m. and there was
Hmm.
no bus. And this is a about 6-year-old woman using a cane, and shout out to her. Working at a gas station at any time could be
Yeah.
pretty dangerous for a woman, but working the graveyard shift especially. But that was her only way to get to work. Is using a car service. And
Hmm.
while we're an affordable option, it we shouldn't have to exist, honestly, right? So I'd like to
Right.
see us be put out of business at one point in time where that's not a necessity. Um, and so that's a huge need, as we know that housing prices continue to rise and folks are working 2 and 3 jobs to, pay the rent and do the things that they need to do. And we really need to see, Kitsap Transit offer transit for regular folks. I'll put it in quotes, regular
Hmm.
folks that are working minimum wage jobs outside of normal bus hours, and also on the weekends as well. And so I
Right.
just wanna put that out there that there are many people, and I will direct them, to you to send emails, and it's hard to get people to advocate and come down, and, but I hear it, but I wanted to pass that on to you.
Yeah. It sounds like if we could convince Kitsap Transit to do a dial a ride on off hours. I
Yep.
don't know if we could ever get them to 24 hours a day, but you know, maybe if we could extend it to at least 10 o'clock at night and start at 4 in the morning or something.
It would be such a powerful powerful tool for folks that are trying to navigate these housing prices
Yeah.
and transportation prices, quite frankly, both of them.
Yep.
Well, man, I really appreciate it. We've gone almost a full hour. How do you feel for your first time?
I feel fine. You know, the biggest reason why I decided to run for office is it felt like we didn't have any access for quite a while. We had no community meetings, there wasn't much interaction between our elected or appointed officials and us. So, yeah, I enjoy getting information from people and trying to figure out what I can help change.
Well, I tell you what, I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you coming with things that you wanted to share with the community and say, hey, you need to know about this and that. I mean, we had a full topic of a full slate of things to talk about, uh, and that you're open for questions. And we don't have any today, but hopefully, as you come on more and more, folks will levy their questions. I hope you see an increase in the monthly meetings and also in public comment, either in writing or in person. And that's how we're gonna have the best city that we can have is by engagement and us all working together.
So I just want to put one thing out there about if you send an email to city.council, right? Then
City.council.
it goes to all of us. So when it goes to all of us, only two people can engage with you,
Ooh,
right? Because a third or fourth would be considered a quorum, so they can't do that. So if you have a question, send it directly to me.
got
And then if you just have a general, um, I wish our city could plant more trees, send that to city.council at City of Bremerton.
is that I just typed that in the private chat, is that correct?
I can't see.
Oh, you can't see that. It's city.council@ci.bremerton.wa.us.
Yeah, those
Okay.
are for general comments that you want them all to see. But if you want me to respond to you, then you have to send it to me direct at jane.rebelowski.
Wow. And I take it, so if someone does the city.council@ci.bremerton.wa.us, wow, that's a mouthful. Uh, and only two people can respond. How do you determine who's going to respond to that?
It's typically the council president.
Ah, okay. So they'll kind of delegate it to different people.
Yeah, typically, um, you know, a lot of the letters we get, though,
Hmm.
it's comments. It's not asking us to respond.
Got you. Okay.
So,
We want you to do this about that, not a how can you or
right.
all right. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for so much information. I've learned a lot in this short hour. I appreciate you. What I like to do is give folks the last word on shows. So I'm going to give you the last word, Jane.
All right. Well, it was a real pleasure, and I love sharing information with my neighbors. So, I hope people can come to my monthly meetings. Those are great. But I hope you keep inviting me because I would love to do this often and just kind of keep everybody going both ways. Not everybody can attend a meeting in person. So, this is a great outlet.
Well, if you're willing, I got you slotted in once a month at least. And if there's something
Okay.
special coming up and you're like, hey, I need to come on and let people know this is happening, then yep, it's an open door.
Okay, great. All right. I look forward to it and have a great weekend. I'll be busy Saturday, but Sunday, hopefully the weather's nice and I can go play.
All right. Well, we thank you. I'm going to go ahead and put you backstage there. All right, everyone. That was the Civic Cafe. That was our first podcast of this year, having a city council person on, and that is your District 4 Councilwoman Jane Rebelowski. That was chock full of information. I learned a lot. I'm going to leave the information at the bottom here. Let me pop that back up. As Jane was saying, if you want her to have the information, send emails directly to her, as that is the most effective way. And if you send it to the city council, then that goes to everyone and that has to be delegated out. There's a lot of different ways that Jane has shared to get in touch with her. You can see her in person at monthly District 4 meetings at Bremerton High School every first Thursday at 5 p.m. You're always welcome to come down to city council meetings on Wednesday. And remember, don't forget, this Saturday at 9 a.m. is the big event at the Kitsap Conference Center. You won't be able to talk, but there's going to be so much good information there. And you can learn about not only the 2023 Council goals and priorities, economic development, financial stability, housing equity, parks and environmental stewardship, public engagement, public safety and support, staffing, and transportation and multimodal support. So there's a lot that they're going to get into. They are very busy indeed. And so we're grateful that we have a contingent of city council that is here grinding away and doing the work. And as you heard, Jane will be back. So get your questions and comments ready, and let's build a better Bremerton together. As for now, I am R1 Cameron. This is The Conduit. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Until next time, everyone, we'll see you then.